What if I told you the woman everyone is calling a monster might have spent years controlled herself? Sounds like something straight out of a movie, right? Well, this is real life. And the more details that come out about Elizabeth Siders, the more questions that keep popping up. Was she simply another adult responsible for what happened? Or was she also a victim of this very family she became a part of? Hello, lovelies. How are we today? I'm Summer. This is All Day Mystery. If you like true crime, maybe a little bit of mystery, maybe a lot of bit of mystery, this is the place for you. So if you like, have some coffee, have some tea, sit down, have a snack. Let's do this. This case has had people talking since the arrests were announced. 4 adults are facing serious charges after investigators say 16 children were found living in shocking conditions. For a lot of people, that was the end of the story. Case closed, villains identified, everybody moves along, right? But then another layer started peeling back. Elizabeth Siders' family says she was taught to accept a specific set of beliefs and opinions. According to public reports, Elizabeth was 15 years old when she married Gary Siders Jr. in 2008. In West Virginia, he would have been 18 years old. Maybe West Virginia just allows certain things. She was 15. How is that allowed? While most teenagers were figuring out high school, she was stepping into marriage and eventually motherhood. Her attorney says she spent nearly her entire adult life inside that family dynamic. Her brother has publicly claimed she was manipulated and controlled. Now, before anyone freaks out, no, that doesn't automatically make her innocent. And it also doesn't automatically mean those claims are true. Those are allegations and arguments that haven't been fully tested in court, of course. But here's the part that's uncomfortable to talk about. Life isn't always as simple as good guy versus bad guy. Sometimes someone can experience years of manipulation and still be accused of causing harm to others. Those two ideas can exist at the same time, unfortunately. So today, let's look at what's been reported, what's been alleged, and why this case may be far more complicated than it first appeared. So let's rewind. Let's go to the beginning, because this case didn't make national headlines over something small. It made headlines because what investigators say they found inside this Ohio home left even seasoned officers stunned. According to court documents, the deputies responded to the property after concerns were raised about the welfare of several children living there, ranging from 1 to 18 years in age, which really makes me wonder where these children, were they taught anything? Were they taught how to take care of themselves at all? If this is how the house is. When authorities entered the home, they say they found conditions that were filthy and unsafe. Investigators described piles of trash, overwhelming odors, animal waste, and an environment they believed posed serious health risks. I mean, there was human waste in there too. Gross. The children were reportedly found living in those conditions, and investigators alleged they had been neglected for significant periods of time. Some of the children couldn't speak, and the oldest, being 18 years old, may have had mental disabilities and couldn't write. Now, just hearing that is enough to make your stomach turn. At least my stomach turn. Children deserve safety. Children deserve clean clothes. Children deserve healthy meals. Children deserve adults who protect them. Why are we having children if we can't take care of them? That is my question. And that's something I don't think anyone can argue with. As investigators continue looking into the family, 4 adults were arrested. These charges were on Gary Siders Jr., his parents, Gary Siders Sr. and Sharon Siders, and Gary Jr.'s wife, Elizabeth Siders, of course. Each of them has pleaded not guilty to the charges against them. Then the story took another unexpected turn. Elizabeth's attorney began painting a very different picture of her life behind closed doors, which we've kind of been covering a little bit already. According to him, Elizabeth entered this family when she was only 15 years old, like we said. Unbelievable. Think about that for just a second. At 15, most of us couldn't even decide what we wanted for dinner, much less cook it for ourselves. That's a lot. Marriage. She was entered in a marriage. That's a lot. Her attorney argues she spent nearly 2 decades almost entirely inside this family's world. A world that, according to her own relatives, was isolated from the outside and was being controlled. If that's what happened here, it could explain why someone might stay in a situation that seems impossible for outsiders to understand. But, and this is the big but, explaining behavior is not the same as excusing behavior. Those are two completely different conversations. Because while Elizabeth's attorney says she may have been manipulated, prosecutors allege that children were still living in unacceptable conditions. I mean, beyond unacceptable conditions. And that's ultimately what this case is about. Can someone spend years as a victim of manipulation and later become responsible for harming others? That's not an easy question. There are still far more questions than answers. Now, here's where I'm going to share my opinion, and you're absolutely welcome to disagree with me if you want. I think there's a real possibility that Elizabeth was a victim too. Not because she's been charged, not because I think that automatically excuses anything, but because I keep going back to one detail. And yes, it may annoy you, but I'm going to say it. She was reportedly just 15 years old when she married into this family. When you're 15, you're not thinking, I wonder if I'm walking into a lifetime of control and isolation. You're thinking someone loves you. You're thinking you've found your future. You're trusting the people who are supposed to care about you. You're still a kid at 15. And if the reports about isolation and control are true, I can imagine that she may not have fully understood what she was stepping into until she was already deeply embedded into that life. Sometimes manipulation doesn't happen all at once. Sometimes it's slow. Sometimes it happens so gradually that you don't even realize your world has gotten smaller. Again, that's just my opinion based on what's been reported publicly so far. It doesn't erase the seriousness of the allegations. It doesn't mean she shouldn't be held accountable if the evidence shows she harmed those children. But I do think it's possible for someone to have entered a situation looking for love and years later find themselves trapped into something they never imagined. This case reminds me that life isn't always black and white. Sometimes there are victims within the very systems that end up hurting other people. That's what makes the story so difficult and why I will be watching closely to see what comes out in court. Again, that's just my opinion based on what's reported publicly so far. It doesn't erase anything about this. I mean, think about this. 16 kids and she's 33 years old. She was married at 15. Her oldest one is 18 now. And that doesn't mean she was, what does that mean she was pregnant at 13, 14 years old? I mean, who's good at math here? Maybe she was 15, 16 when she did. But that's still not okay. That's very hard. As this case continues to unfold, one thing is certain. There are still a lot of questions that haven't been answered. We haven't heard all of the evidence. We haven't seen anything the prosecution or defense has to present. And until that happens, none of us knows the full story. What we do know is that children deserve to be safe, protected, and cared for. If the allegations are true, my heart breaks for every child involved in this. And if it also turns out that someone in this case was manipulated or controlled for years, That's another heartbreaking reality worth acknowledging. Sometimes the hardest cases aren't the ones where the answers are obvious. They're the ones that force us to sit with uncomfortable questions. Because we wrap up, before we wrap up, let's talk about where this case stands right now. All 16 children remain in protective custody, where officials say they're receiving medical care, counseling, and trauma-informed support. That's the most important update of all. As for the adults, Elizabeth Siders and Gary Siders Jr. have both pleaded not guilty to 16 counts of child endangerment, 1 count for each child. Gary Siders Sr. and Sharon Siders have also pleaded not guilty to the charges against them. I guess Gary Siders had a fall during this whole thing of being arrested, sometime then. So he actually, I think, is out now because of that fall and his injuries. Investigators have said the case is still active, and prosecutors have indicated that additional charges could still be filed as they continue reviewing the evidence. Elizabeth has also asked the court to lower her bond, while prosecutors argue she should remain in custody because of the seriousness of the allegations. She is still a mother, and she does have like a 1-year-old, and I'm sure these kids are really wanting their mother. I'm sure. So maybe let her see them with other people. I don't know. Despite everything that's been reported, this case is still in its early stages. One thing that hasn't changed is whether Elizabeth is ultimately viewed only as an offender, as someone who was also a victim of manipulation, or as both. Will depend on the evidence presented in court, not public opinion, of course. So now I'd love to hear from you. Do you think Elizabeth Siders was simply another adult responsible for what happened? Do you think it's possible she was both a victim and someone who may still bear responsibility? Or do you see this case completely differently? Let's keep the conversation going, but be respectful about it. Try to be, please. We can disagree without attacking. If you enjoyed today's deep dive into this Ohio case, it's way too close to home for me. I'm not used to that. I don't know what's going on in Ohio right now. There's been a couple of things that's happened. But if you enjoyed it, if you're still here, I really do appreciate it. I appreciate you guys watching me, and I like doing this. I like talking about these cases. They need to be put out there so people are aware of what's going on in this world. I think that's very important, and for the victims as well. Thank you for watching. Please be careful out there. Always pay attention. Watch your back. And as always, don't talk to strangers.